Hi, everyone. It's Peter Kraut of Silver Stock Investor with another episode of the Pay Dirt podcast, where we interview management of companies that we recommend, but also personally own, track, and report on. I'm joined today by Darrell Rader, who is President and CEO of Minaurum Gold. Darrell, thanks for taking some time to speak with us.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
Always a pleasure. So, Darrell, we'll jump right into it. You've been getting some exciting drill results on your Alamos Silver Project at Minaurum Gold. These are showing stacked veins. So why is this a big deal?
So, stacked veins, traditionally in Mexico, you have these sort of regular vein systems where the veins form in faults and there can be big and strong, high grade silver, but there's a certain amount of tonnage that can go in these veins. If you're thinking about one vein, but when you get stacked, your ability to get more tonnages increases. Different zones can have higher grade mineralization. And it's something that we have just started to determine as we're modeling these veins as part of moving towards our maiden resource. The reason it's so important in Mexico is really because of some of the more recent significant takeovers that have occurred in our industry, specifically Gato Silver and Silvercrest were both stacked vein systems. And if you look at stacked veins and what they did and what we're starting to see is quite often in stacked veins, you have one or two, there's potential for three or four. And at Silvercrest, for instance, Las Chispas, the Babicanora vein was a blind discovery that was stacked on behind a series of other ones. And we're starting to see that potential here by doing our modeling. We're finding drill holes that we're kind of like, what are these orphan holes doing here? And as we model it, it's like, okay, this is another vein system, another drill target, and we want to put more holes into that.
Excellent. So there's also potential for robust unfilled mineralized targets at two of the targets, the main ones, I think, at Alamos, Promontorio and Europa. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit and tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, if it's okay with you, I wouldn't just mind sharing my screen here quickly
Sure.
because I have a graphic that kind of explains that really well. So what you're looking at here is Promontorio, and we have two targets, Promontorio and Europa, that are going into our maiden resource. They represent approximately about 5% of our known vein system, so there's a lot more growth potential to come. As we were doing our modeling the last 3 months now, moving towards our maiden resource, we're working with IMC out of Tucson. More notably, more recently, we brought in one of the top resource models from Silvercrest 1 and 2, worked at Santa Elena and Chispas. He's been working with our team to not only get the initial resource structure, but also to see if there's holes. And one of the things we determined is, yeah, there's a lot of holes in the existing resource and well that we're working on. So the idea is we're going to shift our drilling focus towards that in the coming months with the intention of getting our maiden resource out at the end of summer in time for the Beaver Creek conference. But what you see here is the green holes are sort of highlight drill intercepts. This is all silver equivalent. The dark purple is 1 kilo contours and higher. And these gold stars are basically the drill targets where we say, okay, this is an obvious area where the high grade extends. Let's just put a few holes in here, extend the high grade along strike, and you can add tonnages very quickly at this point, considering the kind of grades you're seeing. So this is one of our main focuses on the interim here over the next 2.5 months is drilling these gold stars, extending these zones in very obvious directions that are obvious now, but weren't that much so, 2, 3 months ago before we started getting the initial documentation back from our resource calculating groups. And now that we're using all these advanced engineering programs. And on the one thing I will note on the right side, you can see a little box showing the Veta Grande vein. This is the stacked veins we're starting to see here, and this is one of the stacked veins. And I'm just going to jump through. This is another stacked vein. You can see the open targets here. That's where we're going to be doing more drilling. And sorry, this is the Europa target, which is going to be the purest silver target we're putting into our resource, our maiden resource. You can see when we got these numbers back, we said, well, we have to continue drilling here. There are a lot of open zones. But what we're looking for in a nutshell, between Promontorio and Veta Europa, the two targets we're putting into the maiden resources, we're targeting something in the 50 to 60 million ounce silver equivalent range. Our target grade is somewhere north of 325, 340 silver equivalent and higher. This target is going to be much more silver rich. The other target, Promontorio, is going to be a bit more base metal rich. But as we proceed here, we're going to add ounces at both of these targets and get them into that maiden resource.
That's fantastic. That's pretty exciting too because it's not that easy or all that often that we can find those kinds of grades, and especially over decent widths. So the potential for Minaurum looks pretty exciting as we go forward. Um, Darrell, I want to ask, there's an upcoming maiden resource. You alluded to that before. Maybe you can tell us about, give us a little color on that and tell us if, personally, I see there's a potential for re-rate. I think that the market's not recognizing, what you have, and maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think we're sort of looking at a multi-stage process here that we want to make clear to the market that will be clear to the market once we announce the maiden resource. But there's sort of two sides to the re-rate. The first side is getting the maiden out so that investors can sort of compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. The other side is showing a very clear path from, let's say, 50, 60 to 100 million ounces plus. And I have a couple of slides I can show you here that sort of reiterate that. But, the first two slides I showed you were, here's the existing areas. These have some open areas that we're going to put some holes into. And by some holes, I mean maybe we'll probably drill another 7,000 meters max. And I think we're very comfortably into our resource target at that point. This is where we go from that point to 110, 120 million silver equivalent at similar grades, if not higher grades, as a lot of these targets are pure silver. So these just show you areas that we've drilled. This Cotera target on the top right is a stacked vein system. There's 3.2 meters of 335, 3.2 of 248, but within about 20 meters of it behind this vein, I don't have that long section, is another vein that we were hitting 400 or 500 grams over multiple meters. These other targets represent just a few of the areas that are still open that we need to drill off our existing resource, or sorry, I should say our updated resource. But the key here is get that initial out, show a clear path to 100 plus without any new discoveries. It's simply going into areas that we've had discoveries and drilling more holes to get it up to the resource category. Minas Nuevas is a very obvious one here. This is actually a historical resource calculated in the early 80s. They calculated approximately 15 million ounces at 300 grams per ton silver. There's virtually no base metals here. We just have a few holes in here. You can see our key one is on the left there, 9.8 meters of a kilo. This is an obvious one that we're going to drill off. And I should say all the holes for the existing maiden resource and a resource update are already permitted, ready to go. And Quintera is another big target that we're going to put into our updated resource. This is a 100 million ounce historical producer, a lot of high grade here. We only have one hole in. We know that they left a lot behind. And so that's an area we're going to drill. So sort of reiterate, it's get that initial resource out 50 to 60, come late August, early September, then probably drill for a good 6 or 7 months. Probably by about February next year, we should be ready to release our updated resource, which would probably be in about the 100 million ounce plus range. Then where the re-rating comes in is not just getting the resource out, but starting to capitalize on this project being one of the only fully permitted new discoveries in Mexico. So we have to take advantage of that permit. And the way you take advantage of that permit is getting this thing as quickly to production as you can. And as quickly as possible in our terminology is get the resource out, move straight to a PEA, pre-fees, and start producing. We could start producing tomorrow on this project. It has all the permits in place, underground only, but the targets are underground type targets. So that's where the re-rating comes, because if you look at our peer group, I used to say, our peers that are permitted are companies like Gatos, Silvercrest, and others. They're, of course, all gone now. The next sort of peer group that have big resources, the Vislas, Go Golds, companies like that, they've been waiting for their permits for multiple years now, and they're sitting there at 6, 7, 800 million market caps. I think we can catch up with them through getting multiple resources out and then moving pretty speedily into that moving to production stage, considering we already have the permits in place.
So, Darrell, the first thing that comes to mind is, the high grade silver is music to my ears. And the other thing is the all the potential from the upside that you've described. It's just tremendous. I just think that people who are interested in advanced silver plays have to pay attention. Um, One last thing, we like to talk about anecdotes and things that mining CEOs have for us and can bring some color to the industry and to the sector. Do you have something that you can share with us that helps to kind of tie in with Minaurum?
Yeah, I'd say the big thing is just timing in our industry. As you know, we have very frequent, well, upswings, and they often aren't necessarily these 5, 10 year upswings that you'd like to have.
Right.
Like we had at the beginning of my career when I started between '02 and basically
That's
2011. It was just up except for 2008. We haven't had that since. But the thing is about timing and getting the timing right. And it was funny, a few years ago, I have a number of kids, but my kids are relatively spaced out. I think the closest any of my kids are to one another is probably about 3 years.
Hmm.
And I do have a big gap of about 6 years between my last two children. And I had told my broker about this because he was asking about my kids. And a day later, he called me and he said, Darrell, I was just looking at this. Do you realize that you had each of your kids in a bull market for mining? And I said, really? I never thought of it that way. But obviously, when things are going well, you think, well, maybe we can have another kid. We have the
Right.
money, the market's doing well, the portfolio's all in the green.
Right.
And it's sort of that thinking over having done this for about almost 25 years now. You need to get the market when the market's good. And using that anecdote to Minaurum today, we've said, okay, we have our peer group that have much larger resources, but we're catching up, but they're not permitted. We have no resource, so we need to get a resource ASAP, get that out. But the key is how do we position ourselves as the next takeover candidate? And talking to some of the majors out there, and there's been interviews of Michael Steinman from Pan American and others, they have all said they are looking for mines that are under construction or producing pure silver mines. And as we know, there's virtually no pure silver mines left in single asset companies. The key is how do we get there as fast as possible? And internally, the board and I have put together a target of let's monetize Minaurum by the end of 2016. So that's about a year and a half. So the key is get a resource out, get a resource update out, do your PEA, move into pre-fees. You're going to continue drilling that entire time at, converting categories into reserves and things of that nature, continue de-risking the project. And then you're going to get into the situation, and I'll just share the slide here quickly. This is what we're looking at in the near term is just
Hmm.
get these resources out, do met testing. And then the other thing we're doing that is pretty advanced for most juniors is we are getting explosives permits as we speak. We've
Wow.
already tied up a lot of the water for a future mine. We've made discoveries and moved into production in the past. We've been involved in takeovers in the past, and we know that when you get to that point where the vultures are circling, you want to have as many of the question marks taken care of as possible in advance. And so that's why we have community agreements in place. We already have a lot of met testing, but we have some more to go. We have the mining permits in place. Explosives, we're halfway there. We already have community approval for explosive storage. We've drilled water wells. It's all about making sure all your ducks are in a row. And that sort of target we have internally is sort of end of 2016 is have everything in a row so that all the groups that are sniffing around now, we can start, looking at what kind of a option there is on the table that's beneficial to our shareholders.
Good. Just wanted to ask, Darrell, you mentioned 2016, but I think you meant 2026.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
2026. Yeah.
okay. I mean, it figured, but I want to be clear.
I'm still thinking
So,
about the birthdays of one of
of
my kids,
course.
which was
So,
2016
so
when we
I
had a nice move in silver.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say if, I should say when the next bull market comes, which could be, debatably any time, or if we're not already in it, should we expect you to have another kid?
No, no. My last kid was the most energetic one, which is always how it seems to happen. I've heard from others. So yeah, no, I think we're done there. Now
All
it's
right.
time to put some things to rest, including
Exactly.
getting the norm to where it has to be.
And pay for some schooling and all of the rest that comes with success at Minaurum. Darrell, this has been an excellent update. I really want to thank you for this. We'll certainly continue to watch all the developments, ongoing news and so on. And I look forward to catching up again soon.
Great. Thank you, Peter.
Been a pleasure.